The smell of burning gasoline and pine smoke hit me first. Then I saw the crowd. 15 neighbors stood on my dock at 6 in the morning, screaming about illegal boat races while my grandfather's seeker burned like a Viking funeral pyre. Black smoke poured from the cabin, where I'd stored his old compass and charts. The flames licked at the hull he'd built with his own hands in 1967. If you're watching Karenology, you know this wasn't going to be just a misunderstanding. I grabbed what I could from the burning cabin. My hands closed around the brass compass my grandfather had given me the day before he died. The metal was already hot to the touch. Everything else, his logbooks, the original blueprints, decades of lake memories, turned to ash before my eyes. This is what happens when you break the rules, Connors. Karen Milford's voice cut through the morning air like a rusty blade. She stood front and center, all 5'4" of pure authority in a pastel pink tracksuit. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled even at this ungodly hour. Power does that to people, makes them wake up camera ready for confrontation. I turned to face the mob. What the hell are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Karen pulled out a manila envelope thick with papers. Private boat racing on community waters. Violation of Homeowners Association, Bylaw 47B. We have evidence. The fire department finally showed up, but it was too late for Seeker. She'd been in my family for 3 generations, and now she was driftwood in memories. The firefighters hosed down the dock while Karen handed me an official notice. $2,300 in fines, immediate ban on water usage, mandatory removal of all watercraft from association property within 72 hours. I stared at the papers. Racing? I take her out for maintenance runs. That's not racing. Tell that to the video footage. Karen's smile could have curdled milk. Night races, Jeff. Disturbing the peace. Endangering swimmers. We've got it all on tape. My neighbor Tom Bradley stepped forward. We'd shared beers on this same dock countless summers. Come on, Karen. Jeff's not some hot rodder. He's just keeping his granddad's boat running. The evidence speaks for itself. Karen's voice dropped to that special tone people use when they're about to destroy your life. If you'd like to appeal these fines, you can address the board at Thursday's emergency meeting. The crowd started dispersing, but not before shooting me. Looks like I'd been caught torturing puppies. Mrs. Patterson from the Blue House shook her head in disgust. The Hendersons whispered to each other while glancing in my direction. Funny how quickly you can go from neighbor to pariah. I turned the compass over in my hands. The brass was tarnished but still solid, still pointing true north, even with everything burning around it. That's when I noticed something I'd never seen before. A tiny seam along the edge, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Have you ever held something for years without really seeing it? This compass had been on my grandfather's boat every summer of my childhood. I'd used it to navigate to fishing spots, to find our way home in the fog, but I'd never really examined it. Not until everything else was gone. Karen was still talking, something about community standards and property values. But all I could think about was that seam. What had my grandfather hidden inside this old compass? And why did Karen Milford seem so eager to get me off this water? The fire was out, but the real heat was just beginning. The brass compass clicked open like a secret. I'd been staring at that seam for 3 hours, sitting in my kitchen while the insurance adjuster poked through the remains of my dock. The tiny mechanism finally gave way under gentle pressure, revealing a hidden compartment I never knew existed. Inside was a roll of microfilm, no bigger than my thumb. "What the hell were you hiding, Granddad?" I whispered, holding the film up to the morning light streaming through my window. The images were too small to make out, but I could see text and what looked like survey lines. My phone buzzed. Karen Milford, of course. "Jeff, I hope you understand the severity of this situation." Her voice dripped false concern. "The emergency board meeting has been moved up to tonight, 7 o'clock at the community center." Tonight? That's barely 12 hours notice. Urgent matters require urgent action. The community is very concerned about safety violations. Very concerned. She hung up before I could respond. Something about her tone felt wrong. Too satisfied? Too prepared. I drove to the Milford Public Library, where Doris Welch had worked the reference desk for 30 years. If anyone could help me figure out what was on this microfilm, it was her. Doris had helped half the town research property deeds, historical records, and family genealogies. The library smelled like old books and floor wax. Doris looked up from her computer, her reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. She was one of those women who seemed ageless, could have been 60 or 80, with silver hair always pulled back in a perfect bun. "Jeff Connors, I heard about the fire. I'm so sorry about your grandfather's boat." "Thanks, Doris. I need your help with something." I pulled out the microfilm. "Found this in my grandfather's compass. Think your old reader can handle it?" Her eyes lit up. "Oh, we still have the old Kodak machine in the back room. Haven't used it in years, but it should work." The back room was a graveyard of outdated technology. The microfilm reader hummed to life with the sound of a small aircraft engine. Doris threaded the film with practiced hands. "Your grandfather was quite the record keeper," she said. "He used to come in here researching lake history, property boundaries, old surveys." The first image flickered onto the screen, a hand-drawn map of Lake Milford, dated 1967. Property lines, depth charts, and something I'd never seen before. A detailed survey of the northern cove where I'd been running my boat. "Doris, look at this." I pointed to a section of the survey. "According to this map, the water where Karen says I was racing illegally, it's not association property." She leaned closer, adjusting her glasses. "That's interesting. See this notation here? Private water rights, 99-year lease with Milford County, renewed 1967. My grandfather's signature was at the bottom of the document, along with the county clerk's seal. "If this is authentic," Doris said slowly, "then you have private water rights to that entire cove. The homeowners association has no jurisdiction there whatsoever." I felt something shift in my chest, not quite hope yet, but the absence of despair. "Doris, is there any way Karen could know about this document?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Jeff, I need to tell you something. Karen was in here 2 weeks ago, asking about historical property records for the lake. She seemed very interested in your family's holdings." The pieces started clicking together. Karen's eagerness to find me, the convenient timing of the fire, the emergency board meeting scheduled with barely any notice. "She knew," I said. "She knew about my water rights, and she's trying to get me off the lake before I figure it out." "There's something else." Doris pulled out a manila folder from under the counter. "I probably shouldn't show you this, but Karen requested copies of all the original Homeowners Association bylaws, including the emergency provisions." She opened the folder to reveal dozens of legal documents. My eyes caught on one particular page, Article 12, Section C. "Emergency Historical Preservation Clause," I read aloud. "If any property owner can prove historical significance of watercraft or water usage, they are entitled to one final ceremonial use before any permanent restrictions take effect." "Your grandfather helped write those bylaws," Doris whispered. "He insisted on that clause, said some things were too important to lose to bureaucracy." I stared at the page. My grandfather hadn't just left me a compass. He'd left me a way out, but Karen knew about it too, which meant she was already planning her countermove. The microfilm reader hummed in the silence. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of boat motors on the lake. Normal people living their normal lives, not knowing that battle lines were being drawn in the water they took for granted. Tonight's meeting wasn't going to be about safety violations. It was going to be war. And Karen Milford had no idea what she was up against. The community center felt like a courtroom designed by Satan himself. 80 people packed into a room meant for 50. The air conditioning had conveniently broken down, so everyone was sweating and irritable before Karen even called the meeting to order. She sat at the head table like a queen holding court, flanked by 2 other board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I walked in carrying my grandfather's compass and a manila envelope containing copies of the microfilm. The conversation stopped, heads turned. You know that feeling when you enter a room and realize you're the main course? That was me, walking the gauntlet to find a seat in the back. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen's voice cut through the murmur, "we're here tonight because of a serious safety violation that threatens our entire community." She clicked a remote, and a projection screen dropped from the ceiling. Grainy video footage appeared, a boat cutting through dark water, engine roaring, throwing up a massive wake. "This is what Jeff Connors calls maintenance runs," Karen announced. "Midnight racing that violates noise ordinances, endangers swimmers, and shows complete disregard for community standards." The crowd muttered angrily. I squinted at the screen. The video was too dark to make out details, but something felt wrong about it. The boat looked right, but the wake pattern seemed off. Too aggressive for Seeker's old engine. Mrs. Patterson from the Blue House stood up. "I have grandchildren who swim in that cove during the day. This is unacceptable." More voices joined in. "Reckless! Dangerous! He should be thrown out." I felt my face burning. Have you ever been in a room where everyone thinks you're the villain? Where neighbors you've known for years suddenly look at you like you're a stranger with blood on your hands? "Mr. Connors," Karen's voice silenced the crowd. "Would you like to address these charges?" I stood up slowly. My legs felt unsteady, but my voice came out strong. "That's not my boat on that video." Laughter rippled through the room. Karen's smile could have cut glass. "Mr. Connors, we have multiple witnesses who identified your vessel. The registration numbers are clearly visible." "Then show me the registration numbers." The room went quiet. Karen clicked through the video again, frame by frame. The footage was conveniently blurry whenever the stern was visible. "The resolution isn't perfect," she admitted, "but the boat's profile is unmistakable." "Convenient." I pulled out the manila envelope. "Speaking of unmistakable, I found something interesting in my grandfather's belongings." Karen's confident expression flickered for just a second. "Mr. Connors, this meeting is about your safety violations, not family memorabilia. It's about water rights." I opened the envelope and pulled out copies of the survey. "According to county records from 1967, I have private water rights to the Northern Cove. The Homeowners Association has no jurisdiction over my boat usage there." The room erupted, people shouting questions, Karen banging her gavel, board members looking confused and uncomfortable. "Order! Order!" Karen's face was flushing red. "Mr. Connors, even if such documents existed, they wouldn't override current safety regulations." "Actually, they would." I held up another document. Article 12, Section C of the original Homeowners Association bylaws. Historical significance trumps new restrictions. That's when I saw it, a quick glance between Karen and someone in the third row. A thin man with a camera who'd been filming the whole meeting. Not a random resident documenting community business. This was coordinated. "The board will need time to review any alleged historical documents," Karen said, her voice tight with control. "In the meantime, the current fines and restrictions remain in effect." "How much time?" I asked. 30 days. 30 days? I couldn't hide my disbelief. For documents that take 5 minutes to verify with the county clerk? More murmuring from the crowd. Even some of Karen's supporters were starting to look uncomfortable with the delay tactics. Tom Bradley stood up from the middle section. "Karen, why not just call the county office tomorrow morning? If Jeff's got legitimate water rights, we should know about it." "The board follows proper procedures, Mr. Bradley. We don't make hasty decisions based on unverified claims." I watched Karen's face as she spoke. She was buying time, but for what? What was she planning to do in 30 days that she couldn't do now? That's when the smell hit me. Gasoline and smoke, clinging to my clothes from this morning's fire. The same smell that had been in the air when I woke up to find my grandfather's boat burning. What if the fire wasn't an accident? What if someone had been watching my dock, waiting for the right moment to destroy evidence? Evidence that might have supported my water rights claim. The room was still buzzing with arguments when I realized the truth. Karen hadn't just known about my grandfather's documents, she'd tried to burn them before I could find them. She just hadn't counted on the compass having a secret compartment. The meeting broke up in chaos, with no real resolution except Karen's promise to review the situation. As people filed out, shooting me looks that ranged from suspicious to sympathetic, I caught sight of the thin man with the camera heading straight for the exit. Something told me those weren't the only recordings that would surface in the next 30 days. Tommy Hamilton showed up at my door the next morning with coffee and bad news. The kid was 29 but looked younger, with that earnest face that made him perfect for code enforcement work. Nobody ever argued with Tommy because he looked like he might apologize for existing. He stood on my porch holding 2 steaming cups, his county inspector badge catching the early sunlight. "Jeff, I brought coffee because I figured you'd need it after what I have to tell you." I let him in. My kitchen still smelled like smoke from yesterday's fire, and insurance papers covered every surface. Tommy set the coffee down and pulled out his tablet. "I've been looking into your water rights claim. The good news is your grandfather's documents are legitimate. The county clerk confirmed everything this morning. And the bad news? Karen Milford filed a formal complaint with the county about unsafe boat operation. They're requiring a full investigation before any water rights can be enforced. I sank into my kitchen chair. How long does an investigation take? 6 to 8 weeks minimum. Tommy looked miserable delivering this news. Jeff, there's something else. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I think you should know. He tapped his tablet, showing me a series of photos. Nighttime shots of the Northern Cove, time-stamped from 2 weeks ago. A boat cutting through dark water at high speed, throwing up rooster tails of spray. These were submitted as evidence of your violations, Tommy said. But look at this one. He zoomed in on a clearer shot. The boat was similar to mine, but not identical. The hull stripe was wrong, the engine mount was different, and most telling of all, the registration numbers had been altered with some kind of reflective tape. Someone's been using a decoy boat, I said, making it look like me racing at night. That's what I think too, but here's the problem. Proving it. Tommy swiped to another photo. This shot was taken 3 nights ago, right after your boat burned. Same decoy boat, but now the tape's been removed. I studied the image. Can you trace the real registration? Already did. His voice dropped to a whisper. It's registered to Brad Green, age 23. His mother is Tammy Green, Karen Milford's sister. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Her sister? Twin sister, actually. They look almost identical. And get this, Brad works for a marina maintenance company. He'd have access to boats that match yours, plus the skills to modify registration numbers. I set down my cup, mind racing. Tommy, why are you telling me this? You could get in trouble. Because it's not right. His young face was flushed with anger. My job is to enforce legitimate codes, not help people frame their neighbors. Karen's been pressuring my supervisor, trying to fast-track violations against you while slow-walking your appeals. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of conspiracy settling between us. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of a Friday morning. Lawnmowers, dogs barking, kids riding bikes. Life going on while my world crumbled. There's one more thing, Tommy said. I pulled the original survey maps for this whole area. Your grandfather didn't just have water rights to the Northern Cove. According to the 1967 county records, he had rights to the entire northeastern shoreline. About 2 miles of premium lakefront. 2 miles? I couldn't believe it. Why didn't he ever develop it? Maybe he liked it wild. But here's what's interesting. 3 months ago, Karen Milford inquired about purchasing undeveloped shoreline property from the county. Property that included your grandfather's old claims. The pieces were clicking together like bullets loading into a chamber. Karen hadn't just been trying to get me off the water. She'd been trying to steal water rights that were worth millions in development potential. Tommy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. If I prove Karen's been running a scam, will the county back me up? He was quiet for a long time. Honestly, the county doesn't like controversy. They'll follow the law, but they won't go out of their way to help you fight it. So I'm on my own. Not completely. He pulled a business card from his wallet. Frank DeLuca runs DeLuca Marine Repair down by the old pier. He's been working on boats around here for 30 years. If anyone would remember details about your grandfather's boat, or notice something off about that decoy footage, it's Frank. I pocketed the card. Thanks, Tommy. I owe you. Just prove I was right to trust you. He stood up, looking suddenly older than his 29 years. Jeff, be careful. If Karen's willing to frame you for racing violations, she might be willing to do worse. After Tommy left, I sat in my kitchen staring at the coffee cups and thinking about my grandfather. He'd been a quiet man who'd spent most of his life working with his hands, building things that lasted. But he'd also been smart enough to hide a microfilm reel and a compass, and clever enough to write legal protections into community bylaws 30 years before anyone would need them. What else had he prepared for? What other surprises had he left behind? I picked up his compass, feeling the weight of brass and secrets. The needle still pointed true north, but now I wondered if north was where I needed to go. Maybe it was time to sail into darker waters. Frank DeLuca's marina smelled like motor oil and honest work. The old Italian had grease under his fingernails and 30 years of lake knowledge behind his eyes. His workshop was cluttered with engine parts, coils of rope, and the kind of tools that spoke of a man who could fix anything that floated. "Your grandfather's seeker," Frank said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Beautiful boat. Built her hull himself from marine plywood and fiberglass. Used to bring her in here every spring for tune-ups." I showed him the photos Tommy had given me, the nighttime racing footage that had been used as evidence against me. Frank squinted at his computer screen, adjusting his reading glasses. "This ain't your grandfather's boat." "How can you tell?" "Engine mounts all wrong. Seeker had a custom bracket your grandfather welded himself, offset to port about 6 inches to balance the weight distribution. This boat's got a standard center mount." He pointed to another detail. "And look at the wake pattern. Your boat's got a modified hull with shallow draft channels. Cuts through water clean, not like this rooster tail mess." Relief flooded through me. "Would you be willing to testify to that?" Frank's expression darkened. "Jeff, I'd love to help you, but I can't afford to get crosswise with the homeowners association. They control the permits for my dock space here. Karen Milford's already been sniffing around, asking questions about my lease agreements." Another door closing, another ally scared off by Karen's reach. "But," Frank continued, "I might know someone who can help you. Carol Finch runs the anchor bar down at the south end. She sees everything that happens on this lake after dark. Bartenders hear things, you know?" The anchor bar was exactly what you'd expect from a lakeside dive. Neon beer signs, weathered wood, and the kind of atmosphere where locals went to forget their troubles. Carol Finch was behind the bar, a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and the kind of confidence that came from handling drunk fishermen every weekend. "Jeff Connors," she said as I walked in. "Heard about your boat burning. Damn shame." "Carol, I need to ask you about something. Have you noticed any unusual boat activity lately? Late night racing, maybe?" She poured herself a coffee and leaned against the bar. "Funny you should ask. About 3 weeks ago, I started seeing this boat tearing around the North Cove after midnight, loud as hell, waking up half the shoreline. Did you get a good look at it?" "Good enough. Looked like yours, but something was off about the registration numbers. Seemed like they were reflecting light weird, you know? Like they had tape or something over them." My pulse quickened. "Have you seen it recently?" "Night before your fire. Same boat, but this time the numbers looked normal. No reflection." She studied my face. "Jeff, you didn't burn your own boat for insurance money, did you?" "Hell no, that boat was family. Then somebody else burned it to cover their tracks." Carol pulled out her phone. "I've got something that might interest you. Was taking pictures of the sunset Tuesday night when I caught this." She showed me a photo of the lake at dusk. In the background, barely visible, was a boat heading toward the North Cove. The image was distant but clear enough to make out a figure at the helm. "Can you zoom in on the driver?" "Already did." She swiped to the next photo. The face was partially obscured by distance and shadows, but the build and posture were unmistakably young male. "Looks like one of the Green boys to me. Brad, maybe?" "Brad Green, Tammy Green's son." "That's the one. Kid's been working at Preston Marina all summer, learning boat repair from his uncle. He'd know how to modify registration numbers, how to match engine sounds, all that technical stuff." I felt the case building, piece by piece. "Carol, would you be willing to share these photos with the county investigator?" She hesitated. "Jeff, I like you. Your grandfather was good people, but the Greens and Milfords practically run the business licenses in this county. I can't afford to make enemies. What if I could prove they've been breaking the law?" "Then that's different. But you'd need more than my photos. You'd need them caught red-handed." I left the anchor bar with Carol's photos on my phone, and a growing sense that everyone was afraid of Karen Milford's reach. The corruption ran deeper than just faked boat videos. It was a network of fear, favors, and financial pressure that kept honest people silent. That evening, I sat on my damaged dock, watching the sun set over Lake Milfield. The insurance adjuster had estimated $28,000 to rebuild everything my grandfather had built by hand. Money I didn't have, for damage that wasn't my fault. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Drop the water rights claim and leave town. This is your only warning." I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Tommy Hamilton. Then I called the county sheriff's office and filed a report about the threatening text. Deputy Martinez took my statement with professional detachment. "Mr. Connors, anonymous threats are hard to investigate. Unless someone confesses or we catch them in the act, there's not much we can do. What about the photos Carol took? The evidence of boat tampering? That's civil matter, not criminal. You need to prove intentional fraud, not just mistaken identity. I hung up feeling more alone than I had since my grandfather's funeral. The system that was supposed to protect me was paralyzed by bureaucracy, while Karen and her network operated with impunity. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, holding my grandfather's compass, I remembered something he used to tell me. When the current's against you, you don't fight it head on. You use it to get where you need to go. Maybe it was time to stop trying to prove my innocence and start proving their guilt. The compass needle swung toward true north, steady and unwavering. Tomorrow, I'd stop playing defense and start hunting. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely source. Saturday morning, I was having coffee on my damaged dock when Doris Welch called. Her voice was shaking with excitement and something that sounded like fear. "Jeff, you need to get down to the library right now. I found something, but I can't talk about it over the phone." I drove to the library with my grandfather's compass in my pocket, a habit that was becoming as natural as breathing. Doris was waiting in the back room with the microfilm reader already warmed up. "After you left yesterday, I kept thinking about Karen's visit 2 weeks ago. She wasn't just looking at property records. She was researching the original Homeowners Association charter documents. What did she find?" "That's what I wanted to know." Doris pulled out a thick folder. So I went through everything she looked at. "Jeff, your grandfather didn't just help write the association bylaws. He was one of the 3 founding members who established this community in 1967. She fed another roll of microfilm into the machine. Legal documents appeared on screen, yellowed with age but perfectly preserved. According to the original charter, the 3 founding members retained permanent oversight authority over association decisions. That authority passes to their heirs. I stared at the screen. "Are you saying I have some kind of veto power over association decisions?" "More than that. Article 15, Section D." She pointed to a paragraph of legal text. "Any founding member heir can call for a community referendum to override board decisions, provided they can demonstrate abuse of authority." My heart was racing. Does Karen know about this? She does now, but here's what she doesn't know. Doris's voice dropped to a whisper. "I made copies of everything before she saw it, including this." She pulled out a separate document, a financial audit of Homeowners Association funds from 6 months ago, ordered by the county after anonymous complaints about mismanagement. Karen's been siphoning association dues into a private account, $53,000 over the past 2 years, supposedly for emergency infrastructure improvements that never happened. The pieces clicked together like a lock opening. She's been stealing from the community fund. Worse than that, look at this. Doris pointed to a line item. She paid her nephew Brad Green $800 a month for security patrol services that nobody authorized. Security patrols with his boat, the same boat he used to frame me. There's more. She's been charging the association for dock maintenance, shoreline improvements, and water quality testing that was never performed. The money all went to Green Family Enterprises, her sister's company. I felt something shifting inside me, like a dam about to burst. Karen hadn't just been trying to steal my water rights. She'd been running a systematic fraud operation using the Homeowners Association as her personal bank account. "Doris, why are you showing me this? This is explosive stuff." "Because your grandfather believed in doing what's right, even when it's hard. And because I'm tired of watching good people get pushed around by bullies." She handed me copies of everything. "Jeff, there's something else you should know. Karen's planning to call another emergency meeting Monday night. She's going to demand a community vote to permanently ban you from association waters and force the sale of your property." "She can do that?" "Only if nobody challenges her authority. But if you invoke your founder's heir rights and demand a referendum on her leadership..." Doris smiled grimly. "Well, let's just say the tables would turn pretty quickly." I spent the weekend studying every document, every financial record, every piece of evidence Doris had given me. The pattern was clear. Karen had been using her position to enrich her family while silencing anyone who might question her authority. Sunday evening, I got another anonymous text. "Last warning, leave town or face consequences." This time I texted back, "Monday night, community center, Be there. Monday arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. I drove to the community center with a briefcase full of evidence and my grandfather's compass in my jacket pocket. The same 80 people packed the same overheated room. Karen called the meeting to order with the same smug confidence, but something was different tonight. I could feel it in the air, electricity before a storm. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen began, we're here to address the ongoing safety concerns created by Jeff Connors and his refusal to acknowledge association authority. I stood up before she could continue. Point of order, Madam President. The room went quiet. Karen's smile faltered. Mr. Connors, you'll have your chance to speak during public comment. Actually, I won't. I pulled out the founding charter documents. According to Article 12 of the original association charter, as the heir of founding member William Connors, I have the right to address this body on matters of association governance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen's face was flushing red. Mr. Connors, that document has no bearing on current association business. It has every bearing, especially when I'm calling for a community referendum on your leadership, based on documented evidence of financial fraud and abuse of authority. The room erupted, people shouting questions, Karen banging her gavel, board members looking like they wanted to disappear through the floor. But this time, I was ready for the chaos. This time, I had the truth on my side. And the truth, as my grandfather used to say, has a way of cutting through lies like a sharp knife through rotten wood. The silence that followed was deafening. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the financial audit documents. Karen Milford has stolen $53,000 from community funds over the past 2 years. She's paid her nephew Brad Green to impersonate me in illegal boat races, then use that footage to justify stealing my family's water rights. Karen's gavel hit the table like a gunshot. These are baseless accusations from a desperate man trying to avoid legitimate fines. Then let's examine the evidence. I walked to the front of the room, my grandfather's compass steady in my pocket. Tommy Hamilton, County Code Enforcement, can verify that the boat in your racing videos doesn't match my grandfather's seeker. Frank DeLucas can testify to the technical differences. Carol Finch has photographic evidence of Brad Green operating the decoy boat. The crowd was shifting, murmurs of confusion turning to anger. Tom Bradley stood up from the middle section. Karen, if Jeff's got proof of financial irregularities, shouldn't we at least look at it? The board will review any alleged evidence in proper closed session, Karen snapped. No, my voice carried across the room with surprising authority. According to the founding charter, community members have the right to examine association financial records in open session when fraud is alleged. I spread the audit documents across the front table. Security patrols that don't exist, dock maintenance never performed, water quality testing charged but never conducted, $800 a month to Brad Green for services nobody authorized. Mrs. Patterson from the Blue House came forward to examine the papers, then the Hendersons, then a dozen other residents, all reading over each other's shoulders. This shows payments to Green Family Enterprises, Tom Bradley said, his voice tight with anger. Karen, isn't that your sister's company? Karen's composure was cracking. Those were legitimate infrastructure improvements. Where? I interrupted. Show us the improved infrastructure. Show us the security patrol reports. Show us the water quality test results. She couldn't, of course, because none of it existed. Furthermore, I continued, pulling out my phone, I have photographic evidence of Brad Green operating a boat modified to look like mine, taken by Carol Finch 3 nights before my grandfather's boat was burned. The crowd was getting ugly now, voices rising, people demanding explanations. Karen looked around the room like a trapped animal. This is a witch hunt, she declared. Jeff Connors is trying to distract from his own violations by making wild accusations. That's when Tommy Hamilton stood up in the back of the room. He walked forward carrying his official tablet and county inspector badge. Actually, Mrs. Milford, the county has completed its investigation into Mr. Connors' alleged violations. We found no evidence of illegal racing activity by him or his vessel. However, we did find evidence of registration number tampering on a boat owned by Brad Green. The room erupted again, but this time the anger was directed at Karen. She tried to maintain control, banging her gavel and demanding order, but the crowd had turned. I call for an immediate vote of no confidence, Tom Bradley announced. All in favor of removing Karen Milford as association president? Hands shot up across the room. I counted quickly, at least 60 of the 80 people present. The motion carries, Tom said. Karen, you're hereby removed from office pending a full audit of association finances. Karen gathered her papers with shaking hands, her face pale with fury and fear. As she headed for the exit, she stopped beside my chair. "This isn't over, Connors," she whispered. "You have no idea what you've started." I pulled out my grandfather's compass and set it on the table between us. The brass caught the harsh fluorescent light, and the needle pointed steadily north. "Actually, Karen, I'm finishing something my grandfather started 50 years ago. He built this community on trust and integrity. You forgot what that meant." She left without another word, and I never saw her in town again. The association voted to restore my water rights immediately. They also voted to pursue criminal charges for the financial fraud, which eventually led to Karen paying full restitution plus penalties. Brad Green received community service for the boat tampering, and Tammy Green's company was banned from future association contracts. But here's the thing about winning a war like this. Victory always comes with a price. The insurance money covered rebuilding my dock, but not my grandfather's boat. Seeker was gone forever, along with decades of memories and craftsmanship that no amount of money could replace. I had my water rights back, but the water felt different now. Lonelier. 6 months later, I was sitting on my new dock when Tommy Hamilton stopped by with coffee and good news. "The county's offering to buy your grandfather's water rights for fair market value," he said. "They want to turn the whole northeastern shoreline into a public preserve, keep it wild, like your grandfather would have wanted." I looked out over the lake, watching the morning mist rise off water that had been in my family for 3 generations. The compass was in my pocket, where it always was now, still pointing true north, still holding its secrets. "Tommy, you ever wonder why my grandfather hid that microfilm in his compass instead of just filing it with the county? Maybe he knew someday you'd need to find your own way through a storm." I sold the water rights to the county for enough money to retire comfortably. The northeastern shoreline became the William Connors Memorial Preserve, where families can fish and swim without worrying about development or politics. Sometimes I take a small boat out to the preserve and anchor, where Seeker used to run her maintenance routes. I pull out the brass compass and watch the needle point toward true north, steady and unwavering, just like the man who left it for me to find. And sometimes, when the wind is right and the water is calm, I swear I can hear the sound of his engine echoing across the lake, heading home through waters that will stay wild forever. That's the thing about family legacy. It's not about the boats you lose or the battles you fight. It's about the principles you're willing to defend, even when the current runs against you. Especially when the current runs against you.